We have the countdown.
Okay, welcome everybody to She's of Love. Um, Before we go into this, I think people will notice that there's something a little bit different this week, because it's just me on the chair. There's no two chairs. My mum isn't here, but she's actually at a retreat and she's coming home today. So, um, she is on a plane, probably in an Uber right now, actually getting on a plane. Um, so she's unable to join this week, but we still wanted to go ahead and have a beautiful conversation. But Mum gave me the controls of everything. So, well, usually it's a shared thing
Yeah.
anyway, but today it's just me, and Mum gave me full trust to do this. So I'm really excited, and I wouldn't want it with anyone else other than Michelle. So
Aw.
I'm
Well,
very excited.
I'm just happy to be here with you. I love chatting with you. And Claudia's here in spirit. I can feel that too.
Yes, I feel
Yeah.
that as well. Um, yes, so today's topic of conversation is a pretty interesting one, and we were discussing a little bit before going live and like on Messenger and stuff. And the topic that came up between us was grounding, and I kind of the way that I interpreted it was grounding through everything, and
Hmm.
that means the upheavals and also the good times as well. Um,
Hmm.
because one thing I know I struggle with, and I I'm gonna say a lot of people struggle with, is grounding through everything, excitement, distress, discomfort. It can also be during the good times. I know in some of the best moments of my life, I was ungrounded, and I look back and I could have probably absorbed more of the environment if I was more grounded, and I maybe would have remembered it more, or like it would have been a moment that stayed with me longer.
Mm,
Um, but
I
because
love
I was
that.
so, yeah, but
You're
because
like
of the
equating
excitement,
grounding with presence,
yeah,
right? Yeah, 100%. I love that.
yeah. So I think my question for you is, because of course no one's perfect, there's always going to be moments where we're ungrounded, but
Hmm.
when you catch yourself being ungrounded, what are your steps, no matter where you are, what are your steps of kind of coming back to yourself, and like what are your basic, I guess, procedures in grounding?
Okay. Well, first of all, um, well, on one hand, it makes sense to say that it's good to establish grounding practices when we are in a higher frequency, more high vibrational space so that we can call on them when we're in the lower times, the
Mm,
darker times. Um, all of my grounding practices that I use on a daily basis now were formulated inside of the really dark times. And I just want to preface with saying that they are very much mine and what worked for me, you know?
mm,
So like a lot of times, when I'm sitting with others and I'm sharing things, um, I might give a whole bunch of different options, practices to try out, but always emphasizing how important it is that we really feel into ourselves and what really feels good for us and what works for us. Um, Sort of along those same lines, I can say that when it comes to grounding, um, one of the most useful things for me, and this might sort of cause a little ruckus out there, and again, this is for me, is that I incorporate somatic movements that don't come from any pre organized system. So, not yoga, any system that you can think of. Not that I don't think yoga is wonderful in its own right, but a somatic system that is mine and is very much led by my body, not my mind at all.
mm,
In fact, the only space that my mind is operating in is to ask for guidance, so that my body is free to move as it's called to move to benefit me. So that's really the first thing, is really sort of like throwing out the window ideas of systems and strategic movement and things like that, and just really getting in our bodies and feeling how our bodies want to move. Another big aspect to this is it's very regulating to the nervous system and healing to the nervous system to do this. So it also helps us to process past trauma, because what we're doing is we're being very gentle with our nervous system. We're not putting any pressure or obligation or expectations on our bodies and how our bodies should move. And the same goes towards our nervous system. We're just allowing ourselves to move how we feel it benefits us to move. A lot of times when I first start working with others in this space, we'll just practice like sitting and just like looking around the room and seeing what catches your eye, and just sort of like orientating, to the environment, or rather orientating the environment to us, really. Because a lot of
Mm.
us have lived in a space where we are sort of
I just
adapting
got
to the environment.
chills.
Yeah.
Wow.
So just really allowing that to happen. I'm the one with the power here. I'm the creator here. I'm the author here. And just sort of looking around and seeing what catches my eye and what's meaningful to me. Sometimes you might feel called to stand up and walk around and do that. Maybe just sit, turn your head, but just really feeling like, what does my body want to do right now? What does my body even want to do? Oh, my dog is coming in. Hi, buddy. So that is, dogs are grounding. Get a dog. Definitely get a dog. Um, so that's sort of like a basic that we can just start to practice at any time.
Mm.
Um, there is a song that I listen to personally every morning. You might be familiar with it. It's Om Namo. I bow to the divine wisdom within. I could like post a link to it later in Facebook or something. But every morning, in that sort of same vein, I somatically move in my own way to that song. And it definitely really grounds me into the day. And again, for me, I have found that it's my own system,
Yeah.
honoring the way my body wants to move. And of course, incorporating prayer, breath, and meditation as I'm doing that. So,
Yeah. Wow. I I love that idea of movement, and also simply just taking note of your environment and seeing where your body wants to go or what your body's focusing on.
mm-hmm,
Um, because the body is well, the way I see it is the body is the reason why we're ungrounded, and that's not a negative thing, but it's the
mm-hmm,
body that needs to be grounded a lot of the time, or the
mm-hmm,
mind,
mm-hmm,
which I think is still part of the body, because our
mm-hmm.
soul is already in its, perfect state. Our soul is already, um, untouched. It's
Mm-hmm.
already where it needs to be. But our
Mm-hmm.
human is what needs the grounding so we can feel the soul.
Mm-hmm.
And that
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what I received when you were talking, is like settling the body down, but through movement of
Mm-hmm.
and pure flow, and not
Yes.
taking any other external thing.
Yes.
It's literally just what your body wants to do.
Yes.
And I kind
Yes.
of find myself doing that dance. Like when I dance, there's nothing
Perfect
else looks like
example.
it.
Perfect example. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. That's a really, really good example. And
yeah,
when you think about how often in our lives and like how much time we've spent um, getting up and putting our socks on and going and going and going in whatever way before we became conscious and we started honoring that, right? There's really a lot of doing the opposite of that in this, where we're really letting our body lead what feels good, and that brings us into presence as well, which
yeah.
sort of leads me to the next point. Um, Another huge piece of grounding for me is focusing on love.
Mm,
So, if I am in a challenging space and you know how you mentioned the mind is part of the body. I agree with you. I will, with a lot of presence, okay, because I'm not trying to make it sound like it's super easy when we're in these challenging spaces, okay? But I will stay present again and again throughout my day with whomever it is that I'm speaking with. Really look at them, right? Make that eye contact, really hear what they're saying, hear what they're needing from me, focus on them, and be thinking about how much I love them at the same time.
Mm,
Sometimes I will, um, repeat over and over in my mind throughout the day, even like, oh, I love my children so much. I love my dog, my chickens, my cats, my partner so much, whatever it is, right? Um, and I emphasize this for the challenging times because gratitude, as we all know, also helps bring us back into presence and helps us to take control of our minds as sovereign creators
mm,
here. This is really, really important.
yeah.
Like anyone who's ever experienced any type of like spiritual attack or psychic attack, we know this. We know this is very important, that it's very much mind over matter, and
Yeah.
remembering that we are the organic sovereign creators of our timeline, reality, experiences, right? And when we remember that again, a lot of times the fear will start to dissipate. And
Mm,
another important piece to this is allowing ourselves to go into any fear, to come back to presence. So, this is why we've all spent a lot of time practicing going into our feelings, right?
mm,
Going into the feeling as opposed to resisting it, running from it, going
yeah.
into the feeling, allowing yourself to feel the feeling. And often the feeling will dissipate because it's been seen and honored and loved, right?
Yeah.
And it can begin to sort of dissolve as opposed to resisting it and running from it. If it returns, we can do the same thing all over again. It needs us to feel it again, right? Whatever the need is, whatever the fear is, whatever the feeling is, it needs us to sit with it again.
Yeah. I I really had to go through my own journey with that because going into fear is honestly one of the hardest things because it's
Mm-hmm.
for me at least because I can go into my shadow quite easily, at least in the
Mm-hmm.
past. Like it would take is just give me 30 minutes in a journal and I'll be almost basically over it, over
Yeah.
whatever shadow comes up.
Yeah.
Um, but fear for me is a completely different thing because it
Mm-hmm.
convinces you that you're going to die or that
Mm-hmm.
literally you're going to die if you feel it, if you go into
Mm-hmm.
it, or it will convince you to run away from the thing that you're scared of instead of facing it
Yes.
because you're literally going to die if you do.
Yes.
And I think it is really important if you want to be grounded to also be okay with really strong emotions which are ungrounding, and that's
Yes.
things like fear.
Yes.
Yeah, like you can't always. I think a misconception that I've held around grounding is that you feel stable all the time,
Right.
but you
Exactly.
don't.
Right.
You
Yeah.
don't. Like
No.
you really, because you might be grounded in one moment, but to move to the next moment also
Mm-hmm.
grounded, there might be a blockage that you have to face. I know
Mm-hmm.
for 2 months of the past 2 months I've been going through hormone therapy, and throughout
Mm-hmm.
those 2 months I don't think I was grounded at all through any of it. And going from being grounded every single day and
Mm-hmm.
feeling myself, knowing my thoughts, knowing when, like, the second that a thought came that wasn't in service to myself, I would
Mm-hmm.
recognize it and I would deal
Yes.
with it or I would let it
Yes.
pass. Um, Even if it was just recognizing it, I would know that it was there.
Yeah.
Um, and then I went from that to then hormones, which a lot of women know it takes that away, and it's actually a
Yeah.
really big barrier for a lot
Yeah.
of women, especially when you have imbalanced hormones as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm really like I was on hormone therapy and I was really scared that I didn't know if I was going to be off hormone therapy, if this was going to be a lifelong thing. I didn't know what was going to
Mhm.
happen to my body. I didn't know the changes that were going to happen. And
Yeah.
also, I didn't like the feeling of taking medication every day. I didn't like the feeling of
Mhm.
taking pharmaceuticals. It was just not an enjoyable like feeling. But I
Right.
always made sure that I say it wasn't an enjoyable feeling, but also at the same time I was remained grateful and I always like took took them with affirmations and I would say affirmations to reclaim
Mhm.
energy
Yeah.
and like ownership of the choice. But
Beautiful.
at the same time I was facing so many fears
Mhm.
of and just so much unknown that there was like 2 months where I just never felt grounded at all.
Mhm.
And it was that blockade of fear of like facing it, but it was
Yeah.
not an easy or like one moment thing. Like it wasn't the 30 minutes and a journal type
Yeah.
of barrier. It was two
Right.
months of like
Right.
dealing with something. And
Right.
in that 2 months, I'm thinking I'm never going to be grounded again. This is my life now.
Oh,
Um,
catastrophizing.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
That's a big one. Yep.
yes. And, you know, I
Mhm.
really did think, how am I going to get through this? How am I going to get through
Yeah.
this? It was
Yeah.
so hard. But now looking back, um, I've now 4 days been off of hormone therapy. And
Okay.
I still don't know a lot about what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to go back on hormone therapy. I don't know if I'm going to be able to heal this myself. Kind of in another like space of ownership and seeing
Mhm.
like writing my own story and trying to create
Yeah.
my dream reality. But
Mhm.
looking back at the past 2 months was it's going to take a long time to figure out how to get grounded again. But I think
Mhm.
it's really important to remain on the perspective that I'm never going to be where I was before those 2 months, but
Mhm.
that's not a bad thing. And I'm not
Right.
meant to be back there.
Right.
And I'm going
Right.
to be forward in a higher state than I was before, with
Yes.
more of myself. And you know, i I always say this to myself when fear is a really big thing in my life,
Mhm.
or you know, a lot of shadows are coming up. I read a book once. It's called Throne of Glass, and it's
Okay.
actually a whole series, and it's a fantasy series, and it is actually written for young adults, but I would anyone who's into reading,
It's
if
good.
it's really good.
Yeah.
And there's in one of the books, without giving any spoilers away, she kind of goes into a mirror dimension, and
Okay.
the mirror dimension is basically seen as like in the legends of it, it's seen as a prison and
Mhm.
something where people go in and never come out.
Mhm.
But the main character, she is in a situation where she's forced to go in, and actually, what she discovers is there's a bunch of monsters, but the monsters are herself.
Bingo. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like, even though they're scary and they're like screaming and roaring and trying to kill her, all
Yeah.
she has to do is just sit with them, and they don't
Mhm.
actually harm her, they don't kill her, and she actually gets out of the mirror dimension.
Uh-huh.
And I
Uh-huh.
see my fear, I see my shadows, and I see anyone's shadows or anyone's fear as one of those monsters, as a monster, but it's really just a perception. It's not really a monster. It just looks
Mhm.
ugly. It's very
Mhm.
scary. It
Mhm.
is very loud and screams at
Yep.
you, but really, it's not going to hurt you if you go towards it.
Right.
Um, and even though it's terrifying, like that was 2 months of like every day seeing a different monster or dealing with different, you know,
Right. Right.
and
And that's
yeah,
how
I
we
really do
expand as
think
well, right? That's how we
yeah,
expand is like, like you were saying, previous to the hormone therapy, you were able to observe thoughts, things like that, journal, all of that. And then You're thrust into this completely new experience. It's brand new. You've never been here before, right? But it is in some way, shape, or form a representative of something within you that you get to look at and navigate, right? So within that space, that's exactly what you were given. And then, of course, it takes processing time, right? Like,
Mm.
what did that all mean to me? What was that trying to show me? What did I learn in that space? So it takes some time to process it all and sort of connect all the dots, but you emerge completely different than when you entered, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was like such an initiatory experience. I went from
Yeah.
being a child, literally a child biologically, to
Yeah.
an adult in like one day.
I feel like I have to take a breath.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's probably going to take me longer than longer than I don't know how long it's going to take to really process everything. But
Yeah.
it really felt like that, and I had to remind myself when I was looking at all the monsters that I had to remind myself of that book, and it really
Mm.
that's why I recommend reading it because
Yeah.
things stay with you. When you need them, you pick up
Mhm.
little breadcrumbs throughout life, and they come back
Mhm.
out when you need them. And
Mhm.
yeah, it was a really good reminder because seeing your fear that way takes away the hugeness of it and how
Yeah.
much it like covers your psyche
Yeah.
and is
Well,
kind of
I shared with you a little bit. I'm not going to go into the full story here, okay? But I shared with you an experience that I had recently, again, without going into the full story here, where I literally was shown, and people will just have to take my word for this without going into the story, but I literally was shown that this entire situation that was very fearful, this situation was very fearful in and of itself, um, was not real. It was not real. And when I realized it wasn't real and I went into the fear, it's like, you're not real. This isn't even real.
mm,
I was able to dissipate all of it. However, that said, there was still processing to do after as well and see what it was teaching me and what it was meant for me, etc. Yeah.
yeah,
And then we end up in in an expanded space.
yeah, yeah.
I'm curious for you, did you do you feel like you're grieving something that you lost as
Mm.
well?
I am because as much as it was really hard to go through hormone therapy, I was still very
Mhm.
grateful because it was something that I've always wanted. I've always wanted balanced hormones or hormones in general.
Right.
um,
Yeah.
and they were giving, I mean, I was changing like in ways
Yeah.
that I've always wanted to.
Yep.
And I was developing and I could feel my body doing things that I was like never thought would happen. And
Yeah.
there is definitely an element where now I'm off hormones and I'm in a place where I'm trying to create it naturally. And
Mhm.
yeah, I'm taking 12 months to allow my body to naturally produce hormones.
Mhm.
But I'm grieving where I was going with hormone therapy because it was definitely as difficult as it was. It felt like everything that I wanted on a silver platter of this is this is
Yeah.
it, and things were happening, and it, being 20 and not having anything happen to
Mhm.
like finally at 20 years old, things like
Mhm.
feeling like I fit in a little bit more. Like I could complain about being hormonal now. I couldn't do that before. And like my emotions were my emotions before, but now I had like an excuse. And also
Right.
my emotions were very elevated as well.
Yes.
And
Of course. Yep.
I related to women a lot more, and I still do now because even though I might not be on hormones, I've had that experience, and I now understand women to a very new, more deep level than I did
Yeah.
before. Um, but I'm definitely grieving the fact that maybe I think I'm holding a little bit of the perspective of, oh, now I have to wait 12 months to go on it again, instead of now I have the opportunity to create this naturally myself. I'm a bit
Right.
scared of like failing at doing it myself. I'm a bit scared of like
Right.
choosing to accept
Mm.
that I can create my own hormones without
Yes.
the pill or without the
Yes.
gel that I'm
Yes.
taking.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
That's a
yeah.
huge, I feel like that's shining a light on a lot, right? Like in this realm in general is like trusting our bodies to, you know, do what they're capable of doing as opposed to going to an external source, right? And also, this is related but also separate, okay? Um, those times where we are experiencing very overt, obvious change in some way, like we see like a lot is happening, a lot is changing within us or without us, right? um it can be very tumultuous. Like I know that it wasn't just like a bliss state for you the whole time, I understand that. But at the same time, when we move out of that back into a slower process and it feels a bit more mundane, less obvious, um, trusting that we're still growing and expanding during those times as well, right? Like we don't have to have like the big heavy hitter
Mm.
events, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's a bit of a sort of metaphor for this path as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. It's I'm really observing my thoughts and um remaining focused on what I want to create instead of what I'm scared of or what I'm scared to create, like
uh-huh,
what I don't want to create. Um
yeah,
because with so much uncertainty and like so much, I feel like there's a lot weighing on me, and I'm the one who's putting the weight there. There's no one putting pressure on me, but
mm-hmm,
um, I feel like there's a lot of weight to creating a life where my body produces hormones and not like
yeah,
it's. There's a lot of pressure that that's there, and I think being on hormone therapy kind of took that off because it's like I've got something doing
yeah,
it for me. I don't have to
right,
think about it.
right.
Um,
But I'm just, it's like such a giant metaphor for everything,
yeah,
right? But you're
yes,
experiencing it like it's right there, like actually your physical body.
yeah,
And also the duality, like when we experience the no thing, so like the no hormones, right? And again, like whoever's watching this, like this can be, it's literal, but it can be a metaphor for like
yeah.
anything, right? We experience the no thing and then we experience the thing. And so then we get to really know what the thing is,
Mm,
you know? We get to really know,
yeah.
and I was just having this conversation with someone that I was sitting with previously in terms of what love is not. And
Yeah.
when we learn what love is not, because we experience what love is not, then we get to conceptualize what love is, right? And all
Yeah.
of that. Thank you. You
We're in
know?
a very like a very dualistic what yeah. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you said
um
it. Yeah.
yeah, and I I definitely think that experiencing the negative is not a negative thing. It's not a bad thing to experience negative things because yeah, to know what love is not means that you can now recognize what it is.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
again, yeah, it can be interpreted into any way, shape, or form. And I think um, what I'm going through at this hormonal level is expansive to, I mean, you walk outside and you see it everywhere.
Yeah.
To rely on something external instead of being able to like focus on figuring out yourself is
Yes.
a huge theme in in society. I mean, any advertisement, look at any advertisement for anything. And
Yes.
I think sometimes it is important to not do everything yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about doing everything yourself, but it's about where your power lies and knowing your power. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
doing something that's external just because you don't think you can do it.
Mm-hmm.
Know that you can do it, but
Mm-hmm.
also know I can do this, but right now, today, I don't want to do this. I want to get that energy from here. I don't want to use my energy. And have you ever
Yes.
watched Jason Estes?
Mm-mm. No.
So he's like on Facebook. He does similar things, but like I don't know. He's just a really cool dude, and he talks about a lot of spiritual things. And
Mm-hmm.
um, basically, I was watching him one time, and he was saying something similar about to do with health as well.
Mm-hmm.
And he was saying that sometimes it's important to weigh your energy and what you're giving it away to, because it is important that you're um, living at a centered space and you're not
Mm-hmm.
trying to do everything. And he
Mm-hmm.
worded it really beautifully, and it was like, for example, with food, you
Mm-hmm.
could create, if you really wanted to, like, because there's people out there that do it, you can create the nutrients for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You could feed yourself through the sun or through meditation. If you really worked for it, you could do it. But no one wants to do that. So we eat food, you know? No one wants to give all that energy. And I mean, I know I love food. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be a monk
Yeah.
in the Himalayas. And also, no
Yeah.
judgment, but
Right. Right.
like,
Well, I mean, it's there are so many things that we get to experience as
yeah,
humans, that are very much relate to the lower chakras also, right?
yeah,
And um, yeah, just this idea, I guess, of agreeing to our humanity and to experiencing it, and like looking at life as a big buffet. Like, I love that metaphor because it is.
yeah,
It's a big buffet,
yeah,
and so we get to experience all different things here. And what you said before about staying, remembering your power, right?
yeah,
that that has a lot to do with grounding as well. Choosing where we put our energy has a lot
yeah,
to do with grounding, because I don't know about you, but for me, if I a really good way for me to become like not present and to get out of my body and to feel totally ungrounded is if I start responding like to everything external that comes at me, you know? Like, as opposed to staying intentional, and like choosing where I put my attention, right?
mm.
Um, so yes, it's all related is my point. Yeah.
A question came up for me because one thing that I know I struggle with is staying grounded at places like work where there's other people, where there is like a lot of things thrown at you energetically wise.
Yes.
What would you
Yeah.
say? And again, I'm going to go ask this question from your perspective, like what
Yeah.
you do,
Yeah.
because I think,
Yes.
you know, um, that would help others. And it's not about doing what's right and doing it this way, but
Yep.
just kind
Yep.
of what do you do? Yeah, in
Okay.
terms of like remaining grounded in very external environments where
Yes.
very stimulating and there's a lot going on.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Okay. So a couple things. So first of all is always coming back to the breath.
Yeah,
That's huge for me. Even when I'm just home with my children, some days, depending, today was one of them, I will come back to my breath again and again and again, coming back to my breath, you
yeah.
know? Um, Mantras, for example, one of my favorites is I now align with my highest self.
Mm,
This helps me remember who I really be.
yeah,
I now align with my highest self. Another one, if I'm noticing that I'm feeling really overstimulated, where there's just like, if it's a situation that is particularly challenging, okay, and I feel like I am experiencing anxiety inside of it,
Yeah.
another mantra for me is up and out. It's a mental thing. Up and out, up and out.
Yeah.
Go back up there. Remember
Yeah.
who you are, right? But ultimately, I cannot emphasize enough coming back to breath,
Yeah.
focusing on breath. Um, my my absolute favorite type of breath meditation is box breathing. Four, 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 four. Four in, hold for four, four out, surrender for four. And there's a mantra: God enters me, God is with me, I approach God, I surrender to God. That's my
Mm.
favorite. And that is something that, even like if we're at work and there's a bunch of people around us, we can totally do that. Um, as often as many times as we need to, because you're saying the mantra in your head, you're just breathing, you
Yeah.
know. And I guess the probably the last suggestion I would say is feeling my heart center, feeling my heart chakra going into my heart, um, and breathing into my heart, you know, and then exhaling from my heart, breathing into my heart, exhaling from my heart. Because again, love is a big one. Love is a
Mm.
big one in terms of
Yeah.
grounding, presence, bringing us back to the truth of who we are.
Yeah.
And of course, that's the portal as well, right? Between the lower chakras and the upper chakras. So um, it makes good logical sense as well. But it is something that, anyone watching this, if they're not practicing this, I highly suggest it, especially as we keep moving forward, you know, on
Yeah.
this path, wherever we're going. I am feeling that it's always been very, very important, but it's going to become the utmost importance.
Yeah.
Staying in our hearts, staying in our breath,
Yeah.
practicing presence. I now align with my highest self,
Yeah.
all of that.
I am going to be using all of those mantras actually. I um I love the I love the love thing that you said as well because I had an experience the other day at work,
Mm-hmm.
and my coworker. So I'm very good at adapting to environments. That's one of my
Mm-hmm.
skills.
Yep. Yep.
And I've adapted at work to get along and have the most fun that I
Okay.
can with the people around me. But sometimes it definitely goes too far because I'm with a lot of masculine energy, a lot of
Mm-hmm.
men, a lot of guys. And
Mm-hmm.
one thing when I've learnt when you're with a lot of guys in a very masculine dominated space and
Yeah.
you're one like literally the only girl there, um sometimes they'll treat you the same as another dude.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not a dude, you know?
No.
I don't have the same biology, the same thinking as a dude. And
Right.
also um I think there's times where it's inappropriate to treat me the same way as you would a
Mm-hmm.
guy because it's just
Yeah.
not the same thing.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Yep. I'm loving
yes,
that. I'm loving that boundary for yourself. Like sort of it's a boundary that says, please recognize my energy, right?
mm,
And honor and value the energy that I'm bringing in, right?
yeah,
Feminine energy. Yeah.
yes. I really, I really try and maintain my femininity through, because sometimes I, I can't manage it, uh, energetically because it
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it can be overbearing and I do go into my masculine. But one way that I always consistently show up in my femininity is through ways that I dress and like express myself physically. I always put on a little bit of makeup. And again, not saying that that is a feminine thing, like, not all
Yeah.
women have to do that. But
But for
for
you.
me,
Yeah.
yeah, for me, it's a way to express my femininity and enhance
Mm-hmm.
my feminine features and also just feel more in my feminine energy. And
Mm-hmm.
I wear clothes that I really like, that like really compliment me and my curves because I love some tight pants, you know.
Yep. Yep.
And and I also wear skirts and dresses, and like I really do what I can to express myself in the way that my feminine wants to show up every day.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it compensates a little bit when I get into my masculine at work, because it's literally so easy
Uh-huh.
when everyone else is in their
Yeah.
masculine.
Right.
Um, and also, being in customer service and being a bartender, you do need your masculine.
Oh,
Like,
okay. So you're a bartender. I was going to ask you, like, what do
yes,
you do? Okay. Got it.
yeah, I'm a
Totally.
bartender and I'm also do a bit of waitressing, like I do kind of both. Um,
Okay.
and dealing with customers, you do need a little bit of masculinity, I must say, at
Yeah.
least in my experience.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, especially in Australia, like the laws are very strict on alcohol, so you have to tell people no. And again,
Hmm.
that's not a masculine thing, but I'm just saying you have to like be a bit
He comes
stern.
in so she can feel safe, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm with you.
at work I kind of get lost a little bit, and I had this experience the other day where it really woke me up to how my feminine has been treated, because I kind of walk away out of work feeling a bit gross sometimes, or just really
Mm.
tired, really drained. And
Hmm.
I realized why it was, and it was because I have put the masculine out to protect the feminine at work,
Hmm.
in as many ways that I can. But when other people still, like when my coworkers, they will still say things to me that will hurt my feminine, but because I'm in my masculine, I don't recognize it or say it or put that
Mm.
boundary down, because I'm in my masculine at the front of
Right.
my consciousness. And so I'm just thinking, oh, they're just being a silly guy. Like, you know, they're my
Yeah.
mate. I don't want to pick a fight. I'm just going to let it blow over because that's just how they are. But really
Yeah.
my feminine wants to say like, dude,
Hey. Right.
that's not okay. Like, don't
Right.
treat me that way. And
Right.
some pretty major things have happened where like I've been told to shut up in front of like my coworkers, in front of friends that work next door, and like it was not a nice way to tell me to shut up either.
Like
It was
told
like a
told to
really,
shut up by your coworkers or
yeah, by one of my
mm,
managers, because I was making a
yeah.
joke.
Yeah.
And literally what happened was, and I'm gonna share the story because I love stories. I
Yeah,
don't
go
like
for
getting
it.
into story like mentality, but I do love a good story.
I love stories are fantastic.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what happened was, it was the end of the night and I was on close, and my manager was there, but he's like kind of one of the lower managers, not like one of the higher managers. And
Hmm.
we had we have like a bar next door to us, and the workers there are really good friends with ours, and like we kind of go there all the time. We see them every time that we work. We go to each other's places on breaks, and they close before us. And
Hmm.
so they had already closed, and they came over to have a drink and chat while we closed the bar.
Hmm.
And there was still a couple customers in our bar, and I asked my manager if we could change the music, because it was only like three people. And I'm
Hmm.
like, the music sucks, man. Can we change the music? And he was like, oh no, we can't. There's still like people. And I'm like, okay, but can we just like kick him out? And I was joking, and I was very obviously joking.
Obviously joking. Yeah.
Yes. And
Yeah.
he told me to shut the F up, literally like that, in front of about seven people that are my co-workers and the workers next door. And you know, I would think if that was to happen to me, I don't know, my first thought, if you gave me this story without context, I would think, oh no, I would tell him to like back off. I would tell him, I would place a boundary. But I was
Hmm.
in such shock and so
Hmm.
like conditioned to my environment. I'm
Hmm.
like, oh,
Hmm.
And and it wasn't
Mhm.
until one of the women who worked next door, said, "Hey, Juliet, are you okay? Are you okay?" And
Mhm.
it was that question that like took me out of it, and
Yeah.
that to me, that's very feminine energy of
Yes.
asking that
Yes.
tenderness.
Totally. Mhm.
And it was that feminine touch that question that made me realize, no,
Mhm.
that was really not okay. And
Mhm.
I think that what you're saying about grounding and I'm in alignment with my higher self and breathing and taking steps of embodiment,
Mhm.
moving forward would really help me
Mhm.
to find a balance where my masculine is still out, but also my feminine still has a voice and still
Right.
says things when it's
She's
important.
online. Mhm.
Yeah,
I do want to honor though, like what you said about feeling shocked, because
yeah,
that is a real thing.
yeah.
We can be internally feeling very much in alignment, with all aspects of ourselves, and then
Mm,
something external can come in and just completely shock us. Like that comment, like what he said to you, is a really good example. And I think that, there are nuances here. It's like, because I know for myself, sometimes when I have navigated a space like that, I will feel like almost like shame, like I abandoned myself.
mm,
I don't know if you can
yeah,
relate to that at all.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay. And then like my inner critic will get going and like, sort of telling me how I should have handled it. And and really what I think we can understand is that like it is a shock. It's not what we're expecting. And really what it shows us is like who we are more, right? So it shines light on who you are, which
mm,
sometimes we're able to receive that by being shown what we're not in
mm,
comparison. Not that we're comparing here, but
yeah,
to how someone else may behave. But this is not about the judgment on them
yeah,
and whatever trauma they're coming from and how they navigate the world. This is about us, right? And so,
yeah,
oh, this is showing me like how I am not. Like I would not speak that way to someone. And so then that actually can increase a sense of self celebration about who you be, right? And like I'm so happy that I'm me, you
yeah,
know? And then also, um, absolutely moving forward, we might be, a little more prepared next time with this particular person, now that they've shown us that this is something that's possible with them, and next time we might be more prepared to speak a boundary in that space, like it's not acceptable to me that, you speak to me that way, example,
yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Um, did you follow all that? Did I make all that
Yes.
make sense? Okay.
No, I fully followed. Fully
Okay.
followed. You were taking me places.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I
And it's
really
crazy. This happened like, because this was recent, like when
yeah,
you were on the hormone
literally
therapy or
last
after
week.
last week. So you were on the hormone therapy. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but do you see how it's like you get brought like it's so much. Like I'm really honoring that because it's really a lot. It's like you are physically experiencing your femininity, which you were already experiencing psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, all of that. But now it's like, wow, I'm experiencing this physical component.
Yeah.
And then I'm spoken to this way, right? Until then that so it feels very vulnerable,
Mm,
and so I just want to give that like a really big hug and just honor that but you can do it and it's bringing you somewhere freaking amazing. All of it.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was um really interesting because what that experience specifically brought up for me was how even though that has never happened in that way before, I'm
Mhm.
still spoken to like that has still been said to me, but it was a joke, and it was like how they were and how that environment was. We would banter and we would tease each other, but going back to what I was saying when I was first talking about that work environment, there was a point where it was a joke, and then there was a point where it actually did hurt me, and where I
Yeah.
was actually treated like a fellow mate, a fellow guy, fellow bro.
Mhm.
And that was the line that hurt my feminine, or like hurt me, my feminine, because I don't want to be treated like a bro.
Mhm.
Like, I
Yeah.
want to have guy friends. I love these people, and I do
Right.
really mean that. I love the people that I work with.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, and I want to be friends with them, and I want to joke around with them. And if it means saying those things in a light way, then
Mhm.
okay, because
Yeah,
that's
the
their
energy is
language, and
everything.
I'm happy to speak their language, in that workspace,
Mhm.
because I want to have fun at work, and I don't mind being in their energy a little bit, if it
Mhm.
means I get to be friends with them, because I love these people. But then when it turns over that line,
Yeah.
and it opens then to more experiences like that,
Yeah.
where I am told to shut up in front of everyone, and in front of fellow women who, I mean, if anything, I wasn't embarrassed. I was shocked, yeah, but I wasn't embarrassed. If anything, I was embarrassed for him, because he's saying this
Mhm.
in front of like four women
Yeah.
and co-workers.
Yeah.
And I had already told these girls, because they're my friends, I already told them like my struggles of working in a very male dominated space. And
Mhm.
then that goes and happens the very same night, and it's like,
Yeah. Yeah. So, and I mean that's very interesting because you have to
mm,
look at the synchronicities too,
yeah,
right? And like what is everything trying to tell you?
yeah,
And I mean, we know like on a collective level, there's so much happening with the feminine and the masculine and all of that. So,
yeah,
what are you being shown that's for you? And again, like there are nuances. There are so many nuances, right? And
mm,
so what feels right for you and what does it feel like to be a woman, and what does it feel like to be in connection with a man, and how do we dance together, and what does that look like? It almost feels like you were sort of passed a torch a little bit, like here you go, Julia, like let's bring in some evolution and some consciousness, you know into this space, but first I have to show you something, and you're gonna feel a certain way about it, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's actually a really good way to talk about it, because it did feel like an initiation of like
Yeah.
passing the torch, but also there was definitely an element of like, while you're headed down this path, there's also things that you need to see about being a woman
Yeah.
that do happen and that are
Yeah.
important. And I it's I know this is a bit of a like weird comparison, but if anyone's ever watched the Barbie movie, I was very apprehensive, because I was like, I don't know what the agenda is behind this movie. I don't know how I feel about it, but I wanted to go watch it anyway, from the like observer perspective of just like
Yes.
not attaching myself to the story.
I haven't seen it yet, but I really want to see it. So,
It's it's what we're talking about now, which is why I
yeah,
bring it
yeah.
up.
I can totally
So
see
it
that.
the way that Barbie is shown, the femininity of her, there's this one scene that um like I related so much, because her story related so much to me and what I was going through, because she goes into initiation where she also sees what it's like to be a woman in the real world, because they call it the real world
Yeah.
in the movie. And she goes from being in Barbie world, where like women are everything, and they're like, it's a very female dominated space, and she goes from thinking the real world is like also like Barbie world, and then she goes into the real world and she sees that it's not, and that um the way that women are looked at on the street because she's very
Yeah.
attractive, you know. And so um
Yeah.
there's this one scene that really resonated with me where she like has just come into the real world
Mhm.
and she feels defeated because she
Mhm.
sees the truth of everything.
Mhm.
It's a very
Mhm.
red pill moment.
Uh-huh.
And
Yep.
she's sitting at a bus stop, and there's like an old woman sitting on the other end of the bench.
Mhm.
And Barbie is like sitting there processing, crying, going through the motions of like realizing that her life is a lie and that the way that she thought things were aren't how they actually are.
Mhm.
But through her emotion, she turns to the woman next to her and she just looks at this older woman and just through her emotion just says, "You're beautiful." And that's it. And that's the scene.
Mhm.
All it is that. But there is so much in there that I relate to about being a woman
Mhm.
in a very male world. Well,
Mhm.
3D world, I'll say. And
Mhm.
I feel that way around women, and that's how I see women is so many times through our emotion, seeing the beauty in each other and in men too, and in the world. And
Yeah.
like the amount of times that I've told a fellow woman about my experiences,
Mhm.
they've all been so nice, so
Mhm.
understanding. Never once
Mhm.
have they given me a reaction that I thought they would.
Mhm.
Never once have I been judged when I've shared my true experiences with a woman. And so I think that's what I want to take more into my work because I also judge the guys there. I also take on that masculine role where that they're throwing at me, I deflect it back and I will also throw things back at them.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so to answer your question about womanhood and like how I want to be seen
Yeah.
as a woman is respected and just
Mhm.
understood even if they don't know what I'm going through, even if they don't understand, even if they
Mhm.
don't relate. I mean,
Yes.
the amount of times that a woman has said something to me and I've never like experienced it or I couldn't even imagine, but
Yeah.
I still love them. And that's the same with men. I don't know what men go through. I don't have the
Mhm.
experiences of a guy. I mean, they have their
Mhm.
own huge issues. They can't show emotion without being judged. Like, I see
Right.
the way that like
Yep.
guy friends talk to guy friends,
Yeah.
and it's really, really difficult. It's really
Yeah.
hard to witness sometimes. Like,
Yep.
um, and so if I took also a perspective towards them, where instead
Mhm.
of rejecting them because they're rejecting me, which has been a really big
Mhm.
theme in my life,
Right.
um, to just hold them and think that they're beautiful anyway, that they're a beautiful person, you know?
Yeah. I love how you just went into the heart with that.
Yeah,
You just went right into the heart with that,
yeah,
right? And like as long as we're leading with that love and with our hearts,
yeah,
we're right where we're meant to be every
yeah.
single time. Yeah. I love that.
That's yeah, I really appreciate this conversation, and that's actually something that came up for me at the start was you could feel so ungrounded. You could feel like you're not in your heart, but if the
Mhm.
intention is there, if you're
Mhm.
breathing, if you can
Mhm.
see, even if you just imagine a glow or imagine
Yeah.
yourself stepping into your heart center.
Yeah.
Because I know now with hormones, everything
Mhm.
is blurred. You don't
Right.
when hormones are really strong, and
Mhm.
emotions are really strong, you can't
Mhm.
feel like I'll have an intention of being in my heart, but I won't feel like I'm in my heart, which was never a thing before. Like when I was low
Right.
hormones, I always knew like I could
Mhm.
feel it physically in my body. I could feel everything. But
Yeah.
with with hormones or going through a really hard experience, you
Mhm.
lose sense almost of like, am I in
Mhm.
my heart right now? But
Mhm.
I really wanted to say earlier there was something that you said when it came to grounding that clicked for me, where as long as you're doing the steps that you do to feel grounded, whether for you that's
Mhm.
journaling, whether for you that's meditating, whether for you
Mhm.
that's yoga or the free movement,
Mhm.
as long as you're doing it and you have an intention, even if you
Mhm.
don't feel it in the moment,
Mhm.
it doesn't. I mean, I'm sure you will feel it, but I'm saying even if you don't feel it, maybe you're moving freely and you're letting go of energy, but you don't feel like you're getting any better or that you
Mhm.
feel any better than you did before. It doesn't matter
Mhm.
because it's still helping. It might not
Yes.
be today that you feel it, but you'll feel it
Yes.
tomorrow or you feel it
Mhm.
the next day. If you keep
Mhm.
doing it and you keep
Mhm.
going and you don't give up and you just continue
Yes.
to journal, even if you don't feel like anything's changing,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
a daily
And
commitment.
honestly, like, and there this might not be the experience for everyone. I always have to disclaim that, but if you get outside
Mm.
and you get barefoot and you
Yeah.
get your feet on the ground and you've got the sky over your head, and I know that, it can be difficult for, people in different situations and stuff. Some people might not live in places where they feel safe to go outside, or it,
Yeah.
it depends. There's lots of different situations. So you want to honor that,
Yeah.
okay? But if it's possible and you are listening to music that is meaningful to you, high vibratory music, and you're moving your body and you are connecting to the most high and to your highest self, it's gonna help.
Yes.
It's gonna help.
Yeah.
It's going to bring some kind of benefit. It might not bring you like back to neutral,
Yeah.
if you look at neutral as, sort of a baseline, but it's gonna improve
Yeah.
your experience.
That's
Yeah.
so true.
Yeah.
I think for me, music and going outdoors
Mm-hmm.
and also showers. You'll be
Yes.
surprised.
Yes. Showers are good. That's another good
Taking,
one.
yeah, just taking a shower and listening to
Mm-hmm.
music,
Mm-hmm.
stepping out and feeling clean
Yep.
is one of
Yeah.
the most high vibrational feelings for me.
Yeah. Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
And imagining the water as light, of the
Yes.
most high, that's just, it's cleansing you. And then,
Yeah.
something you said earlier, even about, the way that you dress and things like that, like picking out an outfit that feels really good to you. It could be, sweats, it could be a sweatshirt and joggers or something like that, but something that feels good, that you feel like you're held in,
Yeah.
or you might feel more called to put on something like a skirt or a dress or something like that, whatever it is for you, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, totally. Um, Another thing that um, I love to remember as well is, so this is my thing when I get out of the shower and I get dressed and stuff, and then I walk out of my bathroom door. I always think of the door as a portal, and I'm like brand new and cleansed, and I'm walking through a portal, and it's a completely new experience in
Yeah.
every way. Now, I may not really feel that in my body. If I
Yeah.
am having a challenge with something, I may not really feel it, but I can just have the thought and just
Yeah.
set the intention, right? That's all. Just have the thought and set the intention. And then,
Yes.
of course, if you feel like, the intention isn't met, that your emotional body is stronger than that intention, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. you know? It's okay. No beating up on ourselves, or
Yeah.
judging or feeling like we failed in some way. I have to say that too, because that does come up often as well,
Yeah, you
when
just
when
worded,
I'm sharing with other people, and a lot of times people will say that, and it's like,
yeah.
no, it's okay, it's fine. Yeah.
What you just said is like perfectly worded what I was trying to say.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
that was what I was trying to say, where you will have an intention, and if you feel like you didn't meet it, you
Yeah.
did.
You
You just
did.
didn't do it in the way that you
Perfect.
expected.
Totally got you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that would happen a lot for me, is
Mhm.
because, again, not used to that. My mind was so clear that, like, I would have a vision of, like, oh, today my intention is to feel the goddess energy. So tonight I'm gonna
Mhm.
have a ritual, and I'm gonna do oracle cards, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that, and then I would go and
Mhm.
do it.
Mhm.
Um, but that's not gonna happen when you're emotionally drained and
Exactly.
you
Yeah.
can't juggle that. You can't, like, there was times where I genuinely couldn't get out of bed. I was just so
Yeah.
miserable and sad.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and that is exactly where you are purposed to stay then, is right in
Yes.
bed, just
But
loving
isn't
yourself.
that
Yeah.
also being in your goddess energy to
Yes,
honor where
totally.
you are?
100%.
Like,
100%. Yes.
your
Yeah.
intention, like, there's so many times where I had an intention of, again, like, let's just say today I want to feel grounded. Today, that's
Mhm.
my goal. But
Mhm.
throughout so many things, or maybe not even that, today I want to honor my emotions. Today I want to honor myself. I want to honor myself.
Mhm.
I want to feel like I see myself and I hear, like, I want to honor my feelings today.
Mhm.
Then sometimes I wouldn't do that. Sometimes I would go to work and I would get
Mhm.
angry and I would
Mhm.
react and I would project. But then I would come out of it realizing, oh, I had that intention today to honor my emotions and I didn't do it. And
Mhm.
instead of getting pent up on the fact that I didn't honor that in that moment, I now have the
Mhm.
opportunity to honor it. And
Yeah.
maybe this is the experience that I meant to have. Maybe
Yeah.
being at work, honoring my emotions wasn't what how the intention was meant to be met today. Maybe
Yes.
right now it's when it's supposed to be met. Maybe now I can honor my emotions. I feel angry that I didn't, do my intention during work. I feel angry. That's okay.
Right.
I'm now going
I
to
love
honor my emotion about that.
I love how you said maybe this is the experience I'm meant to have, because that's another
Yeah.
thing. Like intentions, like let's not I can talk. Let's not confuse intentions with controlling, right? With control either, right? So yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Like maybe this is the experience I'm meant to have, and then whenever it is that I can work back around to whatever presence I was intending to lead with, that will be the perfect time, you know?
Yes. What you just
Absolutely.
said right there, intention and control are not to be
Yeah. Not the
overlapped
same.
because
Absolutely.
s- so many times I view it that way. Like, I'm writing my
Right.
intention to control my day, to control
Right.
my environment, and
Right.
to control myself, to control my emotions, or whatever it
Mhm.
is. And I'm
Mhm.
not actually writing my intentions. I see that now that you say this. Sometimes I write my intentions not out of actually wanting to live out that intention. Well, maybe yes,
Mhm.
at a level, okay, but I'm not
Right,
writing
right.
it in that moment to actually honor my emotions. I'm doing it because I want to be a person that honors their emotions. I want to be
Mhm.
the version of myself. I want to get to that point where I can
Mhm.
honor my emotions. I want to be that
Mhm.
person. And again, that's
Mhm.
a beautiful thing, but
Mhm.
it's a journey to get there, and
Mhm.
you're not going to do it in one day. It's not
Mhm.
possible to do it in one day.
That's right.
And so there are going to be times where I fail, and then I would fail, and then it's like, I'm not that, I'm not who I want to be. I'm not who I want to be. I'm not
Right.
who I want to
So
be.
that's the negative feedback loop that gets created. Exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Nuance. There it is. Nuance is the key. We should rename this whole thing nuance. But
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And really, intention setting should be about maybe failing the intention to see and discover more of yourself, and why did I fail that
100%.
intention today? Or
Yes.
it's, and
Yes.
failing is not a bad or negative thing to dwell upon. It's really
No.
it's
That's
really
where we
good to fail
learn.
sometimes.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's exactly where we learn.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe
100%.
maybe we're meant to fail our intentions sometimes so we can
Uh-huh.
see and acknowledge the version of
Yes.
ourselves that's stopping us from living out that intention.
Because
And then we can fix it.
the intention itself is not meant to bypass the parts of ourselves that we need to see
Yeah.
and love and hold and integrate,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. I've received so much from this conversation.
You're so brilliant and wise.
Oh,
You're
thank
so
you.
brilliant and wise.
You
Yeah, I
are
love
too.
speaking with you too.
Yeah, I really just feel like a lot more at peace today, and I've got work today. I've got 6 days of work in a row. Six
In a
days.
row. Oh boy.
So, you know,
But are you feeling more grounded now than before? Awesome.
yes, I'm ready to walk into work and to be in my femininity a bit more and honor my
Yeah.
femininity. And
Yeah.
maybe, hopefully, bring more femininity to the workplace.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I feel
You're
more
beautiful.
prepared. I
You're
feel like
beautiful.
you've lit my baton that I'm gonna.
That's it. That's it. I see it. Like I feel it. I feel it for you. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're gonna walk in there. Yep. Love it.
So, thank you so much for today. Thank you for answering my questions and for all the wisdom that you've given today. I really appreciate it. And it's a gift that I know I cherish and a lot of people watching also cherish as well.
Well, thank
So,
you for having me. I loved it. I always love coming on your show
yeah,
and talking with you and hearing your wisdom as well. Because it's abundant, girl. It is abundant.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel really I don't know, just really grateful to have this conversation. It came at the perfect time that I needed. So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful. I love that.
Well, thank you everybody for watching, and we'll see you next week with my mom. So,
Hmm.
yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you everyone.
It's an